All right, I'd like to call this meeting of West Suffolk Elementary School Board to order. Mr. Sickett, would you please lead us in the pledge? We will do that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very much. One moment, please, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Carr,
Here.
Ms. Steele. Here. Mrs. Kaiser. Here. Mr. Burns.
Present.
Mr. Becker is excused. Mrs. Lee. Here. Mr. Sickett.
Present.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
President Lee.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Are there any modifications to the agenda this evening?
There are no modifications.
All right, we'll move right into the superintendent's report.
Good evening. We have a couple of updates we wanted to alert the community concerning. First, there's a draft legislation that will allow WRS annuitants to return to work without suspending their annuities. Under current law, certain people who receive a retirement disability annuity from the Wisconsin retirement system and who are hired by an employer that participates in the WRS must suspend the annuity if they not receive a WRS payment. Until the person is no longer in the WRS position. Specifically, this pending legislation would affect police, fire department, county, and the municipal government as well as cities. We do have some district recommendations. I do want to thank the Western Milwaukee Lions Club. Thank you to the Western Milwaukee Lions Club for their generous donation food baskets. Some of our families from Pershing Elementary and with Western Milwaukee Intermediate. I personally attended the food basket drop off with the group, and it was refreshing to see the energy as well as the generosity in delivering food baskets. And these baskets, I would say, food baskets were given to some of our top parents who unfortunately are homeless and have circumstances that without their control. And so we definitely know that the food baskets have been great. Also, the West Dallas Lions Club, thank you to the West Dallas Lions Club for their generous donation, food baskets, some of our families at Horace Family Recreation from Shirley Strasser. Our department would like to recognize and thank Commander Switzenberg for organizing and running our first annual New Year's Eve. We had
No, it's
New Year's Eve then, okay. We had over 200 people in attendance on New Year's Eve day from 10:30 to 12:30 p.m. having a great time welcoming in the new year together with music, games, food, and a balloon drive. It was a huge success. Horace Mann Elementary, last month, fifth grade students at Horace Mann took a trip on the task force. Fifth grade students in David Hill Road and Jessica Klein's classroom were a part of the lessons that provided tools like reading nutrition, labels, cooking on a budget, and making healthy choices. Mr. Hillron and Mrs. Klein said the students found the experience engaging and benefit. They loved it and loved the food they made. There was an article that was highlighted on Section TV. We did provide a link inside of this presentation as well for the public to see. I do want at this time to recognize the educators of the month. We have one educator who we're going to do a dual recognition. Not only is she the employee of the month, educator of the month for the month of December from Irving Elementary, but also to congratulate her on her retirement. So this is a dual recognition. So Miss Moran, is she here? Okay, come on up, Ms. Moran. We want to recognize the educator of the month.
front and center. One more. Meeting.
And we would like to recognize Heather Liz, who's a special education teacher in our elementary school. And she's gonna film this tonight. And, yeah, we'll definitely, make sure that you can see the. We actually delivered that to both of them in the month of December prior to the break. So we're, again, congratulations to the educators again, the educators of the month, for the month of December. We want to like to kind of, show you a piece of a couple. We're gonna show one or two. One, yeah, we want you to meet, what's the meeting? Is an alumni of Central. I met with Judy at Rotary, and she has an interesting story. I don't want to give it away, but she had a definite connection with the district that I wanted to highlight with the video and definitely highlight. And so we'll bring this place. Becoming. We'll put it on, like, I think the video, in the video, Ms. Ruby talks about her experience as a student at Central, influence that you just had, as well as, her, the job of getting the numbers and working at. Her grandfather is a former band teacher at Central. And so coming into the band room, she talked about, I'm sorry, the band teacher at Central, her grandfather. Okay, you said it right, you said it right. Her grandfather, her band teacher, her grandfather was Judy's Sorry. No, so Judy talked about her banking. And actually talking about the influence the banking can have on life, the granddaughter is behind. You can say that's my granddaughter. So it was just really touching how that story kind of came together. We're really trying to highlight the faces of our community that really bring the West Allen, West Milwaukee school district to life. It's really impresses on the idea that this is our district. So we'll definitely put that on the website for the community. Some other updates, some community events and meetings. December 19th was the informational referendum session number 3. On the 21st, we held the city schools meeting. The village of West Milwaukee as well as the city of West Allen. January 3rd, I actually met with former board member Ted Curran. January 3rd, monthly PTA council meeting. January 3rd, Battle of the Dogs, girls basketball game. When I tell you, well attended, it was a great day to see. The young ladies, which really, they were competing, but the camaraderie of the district came out in this particular as well. January 4th, also attended lunch with the Rotary. And in addition, we worked with Neola representative, Dr. Zeman, to update the basic policies that are going to come up the next couple of months. January 5th, CISA #1 PAC meeting with the area superintendent. We also had, during that particular time, a special presentation from State Superintendent Dr. Anderson. January 6th, Wisconsin Lions Club area conference. I go down to Milwaukee and participated in that particular conference on January 6th. And then on today, I had brown bag lunch with Walker Elementary. Just want to remind the public that we are having our final referendum meeting for this particular site, and it is held on Wednesday night. Wednesday night at Central High School. The start time is 6 o'clock and the end time is 7 o'clock p.m. We will be having a structured agenda, but an agenda that will allow for input as well as feedback from the community throughout the process. So we definitely want to expand the limitations that can come out of this place and being a part of the solution as we move forward for referendum in 2024. That's all for both board of for
Okay, thank you very much. That will be item 7, our public comments for this evening. If you're interested in addressing the board, sign up either online if you're via Zoom on the link. If you haven't signed up already, it's in the chat, or if you're in person, there's a invite back to the room to sign up. If you're addressing the board, you have 3 minutes to do so. Before you start your comments, please start with your name and address if it's required. And as a reminder, there's no personal statements made towards individual staff members or students during public comments to ensure confidentiality is maintained. That is not maintained during the comments, and we'll have to stop those comments. At the end of the comments, if there are any questions or comments that be easily referenced and responded to, the board will do that at that time. Otherwise, any official response will be made by the next regular board of education meeting. So with that, we have the first person is Martha Saravo, and she is on Zoom. Brandon, if you don't put your dog in the holder.
Nobody hear me appropriately? Is the sound going to be okay for tonight? Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Martha Saravo. I'm here as a representative with Mantle Mamas and Disability Advocates. Mantle Mamas is an advocacy group of parents. We support other parents and students across Wisconsin, specializing in special education advocacy. I'm here today with one of your parents, Miss Wallach, who is present with you and will be sharing her and her son's story regarding an incident from a couple months ago. Several things I wanted to ask that you focus on as she's speaking is, first, the courage it took her to come here tonight and address these things in this public setting. And second, what policies are protecting the students with disabilities, especially in the classrooms, especially when it comes to appropriate use of technology. When I was looking for guidance when things that are available already to the general public, we were referencing page 29 of the West Dallas and West Milwaukee Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, which states that we expect information about your child to be protected and treated as confidential. I was also looking up through the expectations that were laid out in student behavior and technology use that are found on pages 40 through 49, where school staff should be held to those same expectations, if not higher, as they are the role models for our kids. And it's their responsibility to treat every child with utmost care and respect as they expect for themselves. Mantle Mamas is here to support the Wallach family and any other family that was impacted by what Miss Wallach's son has gone through and should never have had happen in the first place. And we're just letting you know we're here to support them. I encourage you to listen with very open ears, as this has been a very traumatic experience for them, but we want to make sure this is impactful and meaningful going forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will move on to Elizabeth Hall.
My name is Elizabeth Wallach. My son attends Walker Elementary and is in the first grade. My son is a student with a disability. One of many incidents that happened at Walker, one of them did happen recently in November, where my son was recorded by a staff member on her personal phone during his crisis. The board should focus on looking into what are the expectations for appropriate use of technology use inside of their buildings. Because why are we, the parents, automatically opted in for our kids to be videoed, recorded, and pictures taken without consent from the parent? We should not have to personally email the principal to have our kids removed from that. The year before they transferred to Walker Elementary, I made sure my kids were opted out of that for safety reasons. So with that being said, I think that is extremely wrong and we should have been notified. My son is a student on the spectrum side with ADHD, sensory, and social support. He is also diagnosed with PTSD. He has his own IEP team and he has his own one-on-one personal aid. So what I'm going to speak about should have not ever happened because this teacher is not part of his IEP team. The teacher who is not part of his team was also told not to communicate or be around my son. So therefore, she should have never had access to my son to record her. She also sent the video to somebody else who did not request for her to record my son. She disobeyed those orders that were given in regards to my son. She did not record him for educational purposes at all. She recorded him for her own personal reasons. During this time, I did fill out multiple complaints, formal complaints, DPI, had multiple meetings, and nothing was done or said. I felt like the school and district was justifying that her actions were okay. She traumatized my son and triggered him on purpose, and she's done it multiple times before, which is why she has a no contact order with him. When I met with the superintendent, all I could remember is how many times he said the ball was dropped and they messed up. My son was failed one too many times by the district and the school who were supposed to keep him safe. Well, how many times do I let the ball drop? I shouldn't. It's your job and responsibility to pick that ball back up so my son is safe in the West Dallas School District. I will be looking forward to hearing back from each one of you individually and privately. Thank you, everyone, and thank you. I would also like to say thank you to the superintendent for our last meeting. I do appreciate that he was very transparent and very understanding at his meeting and supporting me and my son during this process with his honesty and his time that he gave me. I hope I can trust the rest of this process of the school district. Let's make these schools safer for children, especially with disabilities. Thank you. Can I go?
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Next, John Mullen.
Hi, my name is John Mulling. I'm 3850 South Pole in New Berlin, Wisconsin. First of all, I want to address Dr. Robinson. You did a great job at that last meeting for the over at the other school, at the rec center. You diffused that situation extremely well, better than I would have anticipated a police person to do the same. You did a very good job. Now, that's a full stop on my compliments, because the rest you're not going to want to hear. I again called West Dallas, West Milwaukee, and New Berlin assessors. What a high increase in a school portion of a tax bill is high. They both said 2 to 3%, which they said 6 years ago, which got me here in the first place. In 2017, I was billed 18.4% increase, which got me coming here to start with. Well, that was nothing. West Dallas, West Milwaukee residents owning an average home are going to pay 7.1%, which is 2.5 times what the average high increase is. That was nothing. My tax bill went up 10.1%, which is 3.5 times what would be a high increase. That was nothing. Living in New Berlin, but mandated to use the West Dallas, West Milwaukee school system, I was paying my taxes. The man behind me in New Berlin is in the New Berlin School District, and I said, how much did you pay for your tax bill? And he showed me his bill. His bill went down 12.1%. He showed me it on his tax. That's 22.2% difference that I paid. Instead of getting $250 off, I'm paying $236 more, almost $500 more this year. And you're already shaking like it doesn't mean anything. Almost $500 difference. I'd like to remind you of the song, Walk a Mile in My Shoes. If that referendum passes, the average homeowner in West Dallas is going to pay $2,205. I already calculated 147 times 15. I'm going to be paying over $3,000. And I want to ask you all a question. If you're walking a mile in my shoes, are you going to say yes to that referendum? And I'll ask it once more. If you're walking in my shoes, paying that kind of money, over $3,000, and it's well over $3,000 extra I'll pay, in addition to whatever else you'll add on, would you say yes to that referendum? I hardly think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. And just one point of clarification. I'm in the same part of New Berlin that you are, and so yes. It's not back and forth. I just wanted to answer your question that you had.
You know what?
That can only be done to me.
Street. I want to make this very clear. I'm here as a taxpayer, not as an employee. I'm hoping this was rectified because this was super frustrating to me. Is how many employees do we have working from home still, and why? I think it changed on January 3rd. I'm hoping it changed on January 3rd. It probably should have changed on January 3rd, 2023. And it's super frustrating. So that is just my question or comment. I think it's rectified. I think everyone's back. But I just wanted to sort of ask. Thanks.
Okay. That is the last person we had time for public comments this evening. So both public comments and time with our agenda. That be point one, review of our board calendar. Today is January 8th. 6 p.m. we work at the Board of Education meeting, and then we have a financial stability efficiency workshop for our enrollment projections and enrollment, open enrollment seat projections for the 24-25 school year. Then on Monday, January 15th, at 6 p.m. we have a board workshop with Melissa Matarazzo, consultant with her on consulting group. And on Monday, January 22nd at 6 p.m., a regular board meeting we have, and then a financial stability and efficiency, our 2023 audit review workshop, first one for the new year. And then on Monday, February 12th, at 6 p.m., we're going to the Board of Education meeting, and then our financial stability and efficiency workshop number 3 on the referendum. Moving on to 8.2, the board committee reports, starting with 8.3.1, college for regular.
Thank you. Today, our Life Readiness Committee met at 5 o'clock before this meeting. We started the meeting receiving the changes proposed by the Human Growth and Development Ad Hoc Committee. This 9-person ad hoc committee is focusing on 4th through 8th grade. One of the proposed changes is the time allotted to human growth and development. 6th grade will be a 60-minute presentation a year, 60 minutes a year. For 4th grade, nope, wait. 4th grade is 60 minutes, 90 minutes a year for 5th, and 120 minutes a year for the 6th through 8th. So that would be the total amount spent on this topic. During these classes, we would follow learning objectives created by the national standards and surrounding districts. February 1st is the next ad hoc meeting, and they will prepare a slideshow presentation that will share the final objectives and lessons, and then the board will vote on the final text. Our next agenda item was an update on possibly adding a non-voting student representative to our school board. Alyssa shared some proposed guidelines, and the committee gave her some feedback. We actually wanted to ask the board tonight if you would like a workshop on this, or if it would be okay to move forward with the vote to add a student rep. It's, you know, we've already talked about it as a board. It is something that I think we're all in favor of. And as a committee, we have looked at the criteria and the proposed guidelines, and we're feeling really comfortable with it. And so we just wanted to know how you guys felt about that.
Interesting.
I would like to see a workshop. Only because then we can get the parameters, what those students are doing. I think it's better in a workshop where we can provide feedback to you rather than just getting it as a report to you. I mean, not you personally, but you know.
Yeah, right.
So that I would be sure.
Okay. So workshop?
Yeah, I think it'd be nice.
Workshop, yes, sir.
Oh, sorry, microphone. I agree. I think it'd be nice to be able to see those parameters, discuss them, and make sure we're just all on the same page in terms of expectations and those rules and everything.
I'm on the committee.
Is anyone in disagreement? All right, so let's look at seeing if we can get a workshop on it.
We will.
Talk about, since this is a brand new thing for our district, there are multiple ways and go about utilizing representatives and how it's going to work specifically in our district with multiple instances.
Okay, noted. Our final item was information on the course catalog corrections, and there will be a presentation about that too. And that is my report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Starr. Any questions to start regarding the report? Or items for her committee to consider at a future agenda? No? Move on to 8.2.2, our employee engagement and culture, Mr. Kelly. Thank you. We last met just before the holidays on December 19th. Discussed a few things. So first of all, the recruiter position update. The committee did select a candidate, but unfortunately the candidate withdrew their application for the process. So the position is going to be reposted, and we'll go through the process again and hopefully identify the candidate that we plan to bring on board. We also talked about the fall intern activity. 10 interns have accepted district offers and have completed the necessary paperwork. 4 other interns and student teachers have tentatively accepted placement and just need to provide some replenishment. So I'm sure that's been updated and rectified by this point. And they were also setting up meetings with 2 individuals who were student teachers this past fall to determine the interns. Sub-fill rate comparison. So the bill rate actually is down a little bit compared to last year. It's been a little bit cyclical. So it was much higher in September, dropped a bit in October and November. December, we did see a slight uptick again. The reality is there is very much a shortage of qualified substitutes. So it's a queue really nationwide. But we are looking to try to find some solutions to both. The other things we talked about were our exit interview comparison. So two big questions there. What action or change would have kept you from leaving West Dallas, West Milwaukee? Overwhelmingly, number one was staff. So that stays consistent with what it's been for the last few years. In terms of the most important factor in the decision to leave West Milwaukee, again, salary is number one, but personal and family reasons is actually kind of a close second. So that is what we talked about. If you need it again here,
If I could come in on the recruiter position, he actually, the first one did turn it down. And then he went to the second one, and that person also turned it down. So, at that particular point, we realized that there was a 1A and 1B, but there was a large gap. Between those and that decided to go to opposite. In the meantime, HR has identified 4 job pairs that could be attending this month and early next month. And Mary and Mark will be getting that as well as the other participating in for this team effort to make it work.
Any other questions? I guess for Kelly regarding his points or future items you think that to consider on the future agenda? I have one thing, Brian. Something that I kind of heard some rumblings about regarding some staff members is having some difficulties passing their qualifying exams for licensure. And I was just wondering if, as a district, if we could support that somehow, either through, courses or a course that could help them prepare for that exam, practice test accessibility, books or whatever that could be utilized for that. Because obviously, if there's someone here working in our district and we want to keep them, but we can't because obviously from a state standpoint, they have to be licensed. And the only thing people can doing that is passing that exam. If we can facilitate that somehow, that might help with losing staff, some, things like that. So if we could just explore that and see what sort of cost might be involved, and go forward with that.
If I could, I'm gonna ask Alyssa to kind of comment on that because she's been working trying to create some opportunities. We'll talk about ways to
Sure, yeah. So there are some, there was an exciting opportunity with CISA 1, but they were going to offer training, or they proposed offering training for specifically math practice in the secondary is quite challenging task. So we did move forward and find out staff who were in need of that, and then they redacted the course and they didn't run it. It was supposed to start, I believe, this month. So we're continuing to explore different avenues of ways that we can support through CISA 1 or in-house people that are having a challenging time passing courses.
Yeah, and what I'm envisioning, just to be a little bit clearer, is looking at what's out there. And I don't target math in this instance, but really for our new staff, hey, you don't have your licensure yet, and making sure that we're communicating with them about that so it doesn't get, because I think we have only a certain amount of opportunities to take that test. And then if you don't pass, then you don't pass. And so I think that to have a communication plan in place for those staff members so that we can try to get that before they get to their last shot. And then asking staff what they could, what do they need? What could help them better pass that test, and then see if we can facilitate. That's what I'm looking for.
Yep, and we have some of those things already in place. Like our human resources department does communicate regularly with staff around, when those deadlines are, what you need to do to reach the licensure, like walking them through licensure, because it's a pretty complex process. And I think on our end, we're also trying to expand opportunities, including our partnership with Carol, which one of those pathways does support teachers in getting initial licensure, like fully licensed by the state, as well as a master's degree. So like we're trying to expand, as well as, to your point, ensure that that pathway is clear. So all staff know that like we can support them and walk alongside them as they navigate a pretty complex system. But yeah, I noted that and we'll connect with our community. This community to make sure that that communication is like consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great to have like a list, like, okay, here's people, and, and then reaching out to them individually to say, hey, I see this is happening, yeah, what, is there something we can do? I understand not everyone's gonna want, or need those things, but I think that.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree because I think that when it gets to a certain point, it's almost too late. And you have to do a better job of, really, if someone is not successful in their first slide, kind of innovating a bit. Because when they're down to that last slide, it's stress. And it's not a good place to be. So you really want to make sure that you provide them. And things like that. We're trying to get ahead, so we will be working with you. So because a lot of times we just to the point of, okay, we have to do something like, that we have to do that.
Yeah, and what the more at it. Let's talk about the community. Okay. Anything else from anybody else? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Patel. Move on to 8.3, at board member reports of community events. Any community events for members attended they'd like to report on?
I was able to go to the female empowerment night with the Hale and Central Girls the SBA Festival. It was a really cool night. Actually, Mr. Becker was there also. A lot of fun. Got my teacher. Females as a future. So it was really nice. It was really nice now to see the schools just working together, the dance teams and stuff like that. I also wanted to I also went to the referendum engaging session on December 19th. And so thank you to people who did come. I invite anyone to come to our January 10th. I would ask the public to please be respectful when you come to these. We are here to provide information to you. We want to have a conversation with you. I think it's important that we have a good open form of communication. So know that we're there to provide information. We want to answer your questions. And so, we want to help you. And so we ask that you please be respectful in your interactions with us.
Very much. Anyone else like to report on community events they attended? All right. 8.4 is other updates and information items, which is myself, and I'm just going to reiterate like before. We have our last engagement session. I know we have a snowstorm pending, but not tomorrow. It is on the 10th, and by then the storm should be cleaned up. So I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully a lot of people at Central. We apologize for anyone attending the meeting at the Recreation Center. It was unfortunately not as smooth as the other ones had been, but as the field stated, if we can have perspective both directions and ensure that we can get through the material, there is opportunity for conversation and questions as we get. So have those, write them down, or if you have them ahead of time, you can bring them with you and we can ensure get those answered. Or a short presentation before the opportunity for asking those questions, so just allow us to see that material. So there are people who were at that session at Recreation Center who feel like they just want to get a shot at it again on Wednesday, 6 p.m. At Central High School in the outside the auditorium. Depending on how many people we have, we just outside the auditorium. It can get a lot more into the auditorium so that we have enough space for everyone. But that is all that I wanted. So we'll move forward with our consent agenda this evening. Starting with 9.1, approval of our minutes from December 18th. 9.2, our employment summary. And 9.3, our supplementary contracts. Does anyone get anything separated out? Like for a motion? Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And move on to our action item this evening, starting with 10.1, our course catalog corrections. Right.
All right, hello again. So, as I shared with my committee earlier this evening, we've been doing kind of a deep dive and audit of all of our documents to ensure that we have consistency and accuracy across them. And in doing so, there have been a few errors that we have found in the course catalog. And so I wanted to bring those to you as soon as possible to really remedy this. So we have the most accurate information in our course catalog for our community and families. I will say that the practices that are occurring in schools is in accordance with policy. And again, this is just to make sure things are like updated and some of these errors are corrected like as soon as possible.
So I have a lot of faith that like what we've been doing does match policy, and we want the course catalog to also match that as well. So the first correction named here is just on page 10 in our course catalog, which is the weighted grades calculation. And the calculation needs to be flipped. So the numerator needs to be flipped with the denominator. The technical correction, it was an error. And again, we want to remedy that when we are doing weighted grades. In Skyward, it is done accurately, but again, it needs to be accurate for our families and our community. So that's the first one. And our action step would be to update that immediately in the course catalog for this year as well as for next year. As well as the next around weighted grades is adding weighted grades to the courses that are college level courses. And so currently there isn't a denotation in either of the course catalog for this year or next year with that. And I think that's important for families to like visually see that reflected in the course catalog. Right now, the weighted, I'd say most of the courses that do receive credit are weighted. So honors courses, AP courses do have a little, it just says note weighted courses, but we need to add that specifically in the one for next year when we talk about early college credit program and the Start College Now program, which you've heard about from Steve Carr. We have students that are accessing those programs. So I think that needs to be reflected in the catalog. It would be best practice that it was in the catalog.
Is there a definition of weighted somewhere within the course catalog as well?
Yes, I'd have to go and find the page, as you can see. But yes,
As long as there's a definition.
and how you get to the calculation, right? And so if we were to move forward with this tonight, which I'm hoping we will, then we'll be able to update those course catalogs immediately. Something that we are doing regularly is instituting like full counseling meetings across our high schools. And that's not just in response to this, but in response to other areas that we want to just provide consistency across our high school system. And so we just met last Friday and had a great meeting with both high school and intermediate. So shout out to all of our school counselors. They're amazing. Laura Sage, Dr. of Student Services, our counselor lead, like everyone really came to the table and was collaborative. So that would be a next step, would be bring this back to them just so that they're aware of any of these changes that we're moving forward with. The next correction would be in our high school requirements planning sheet. So it's kind of a two-part correction. One, personal finance is a required graduation course similar to health. And in the planning sheet, if you wanted to look in your packet, I just pulled it out from the course catalog. So it's page 11. It has the personal finance embedded under electives. I think it would be helpful if it was just separated out, just so people aren't confused, right? No mixed messaging on like, is that an elective or is that required? So that's like one edit. And then the electives credit total needs to change from 8.0 to 8.5. It's 0.5 wrong. There's no great way to say that, right? But in board policy, it's accurate. It's 8.5. So in the planning sheet, that needs to be adapted. Again, our high school counselors are very aware of graduation requirements, the 24 total requirements, but that needs to be reflected accurately in that planning sheet. So that's like an immediate update that we would do. And as part of that, last week, when we met with high school counselors, they are doing a full audit, as they do with seniors. Now that we're approaching our second semester, the end of conclusion of first semester. And so they're going through every single senior, ensuring that they have set up what they need for this next semester. And communicating that with families and then developing any additional planning that's needed for the second semester. So those would be some of our action steps in connection with that change. And then the last is, so we have a course, our health course that's required is 9910. But families have an option to select comprehensive health, which is meets the same requirement, but is more focused on abstinence. And so why it's important to have a different number, denote that, we're suggesting 9911 would be that when students select which health course they want to be part of, they both meet our graduation requirement for health. But then they can be scheduled accurately without having to like go back to the students and be like, which one did you choose? Right. So it's proven, we've gotten feedback from counselors to be a barrier. So creating a different course number will help with on their end with scheduling. So that's kind of where that originated, that correction. And again, that would be any of these changes that we brought immediately to the high school team, and we would update these. They're kind of just waiting to get the go ahead to update. So any questions on any of those proposed corrections to the course catalog? Yeah.
Questions from the board? No questions, I look for
Move to approve.
seconded, last minute discussion. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you all very much.
All right, and then 10.2 is our WASB resolution. So we have the state education conference coming up next week. And at that conference, Ms. Kaiser, who is our WASB delegate, would be in the WASB delegation to vote on the resolutions that have been passed by WASB, or I'm sorry, been submitted to WASB by the designated deadline. And so we as a board need to take action with what we want, how we want her to cast that vote on our behalf. So the resolutions have been sent to you ahead of time. I want to talk about one specific one, which was kind of outside the norm. So there was one resolution that was submitted by MPS actually, that was after the normal resolution deadline, but there is within the bylaws of WASB that allowance for that to be considered if 2/3 of the delegates present vote to have it considered. So it is possible that they may not come forward for a vote, but I want to ensure that we include that because that was separate from the packet that was sent out. And I think it was included in both books. It is there, but was not in the original email that we had gotten. So that one, I think actually is specifically pertinent to our district, as we do have many different language learners within our district. And I thought that it was a good thing, I think, for the resolution to consider. So I hope that they will personally consider it. But that being said, are there any resolutions that anyone would like to separate out from this group to have a separate discussion? Ms. Tiger?
Can I jump on you? Because I wrote down the page.
Oh, which one are you gonna pull?
There's two of them you brought up. One was.
The one I'm not concerned about the.
The evaluation one?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you are in your resolutions, resolution 2411 licensure, it's on page 9 and line 6. Talking about evaluations. And currently, what they want to do is repeal and replace this piece of resolution 2411, which to me says that we have the opportunity to jump in on something here. It's saying the student achievement as performance criteria for staff. And an example I gave earlier was I had students who cannot read at grade level, but their art and their music are brilliant. So we should not be testing kids as a measure of teacher performance. And I would like to, at the convention, be able to say, we have an opportunity to remove this. So a piece of the resolution, it is 4.80 B in the resolution.
What you're proposing is to amend the current resolution at the delegate.
Yeah.
If that would be voted on. And if it wasn't amended, because we have to provide direction as to, okay, well, if this happens then, if this happens then, right? So besides that one, I want to take that one separate. What number is that?
It is resolution 24-11 licensure, subsection 4.80 B evaluation.
All right, so let's separate out that resolution. Beyond that one resolution, we'll talk about that in a second. The other resolutions that were presented, along with the one that wasn't the one from MPS that we discussed previously. Does anyone want to discuss any of those other ones separately? No? Okay, so based on the resolutions, those other resolutions, are we in favor of those? Or are we opposed? How would we walk us through? Are we in favor of the remaining resolutions? Okay. So let's take action on that and then take the other one separately since it might have an either or. Because if we don't, if it's not amended appropriately, then we vote one way. Mr. Sikich?
Presented, who wrote the resolution? What was-
I apologize.
Which district you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Summarize everything at the top. Oh, that letter line.
I have it over here.
You sent that, summary.
It might be, honestly, I believe because it's a repeal in place, it might be coming from the delegate, or board committee. As opposed to specific.
I gotta be honest, I don't have much faith in the board that's gonna base teacher performance on how the kids.
Right.
It's kind of anti-teacher.
I believe so, and I actually honestly, Mr. Citrus, I am believing that this is not, because it's a repeal and
Yep.
it's not every other system,
you know, very,
which is why I'd like to jump on it. We could say if it's not best practices, because there's some other technology beyond, performance of a test of money.
you know, maybe during discussion, somebody will bring that up.
Yeah, I'd be happy. to.
I was just.
Wink, wink.
That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take action on everything except for, was it 21? 44? Was that?
2411.
So I would like a motion, someone to move on everything except for 2411 resolution in the affirmative, so we be voting for that resolution passed. Motion to support in the affirmative, all resolutions except for 2411. All right? Yep. All right. So we're gonna look at 2411 separately. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so those resolutions passed. Let's discuss 2411. So we're looking at specifically not, we would look for amendment on line 9 to remove or replace. To just remove,
I say remove.
to remove what exact verbiage?
To remove ranking performance, I think remove C. 4.80 under evaluation. I would move it straight that entire.
Yeah, the performance
Yeah.
criteria.
Who
needs to move performance criteria?
All right, so from the board's perspective, if that resolution was successfully amended by the delegation to remove that section, would be in favor or not in favor of the amended resolution? Favor? I'm just asking. In favor. Okay, all right, so, but if it's not successfully amended, we would not be in favor. If it remains as is, or something similar to that verbiage, something about taking student achievement into account when determining teacher compensation, we would not be in favor of that. There's some version, some flavor of that was what came forward, okay? Now I want to make sure Ms. Kaiser understands.
I thought this was about evaluation, not compensation.
This is, it's under that whole
Oh, okay.
parent. To replace that with, and it's included right there with it, like, performance methods like Daniel said. Well, I appreciate something the word.
Are we clear on it? I just want to make sure we're clear, and I want to make sure you're clear, so you're not there being like. And then what we're gonna say, what I'm gonna say is if there's some weird in-between gray area, we're going to, based on this conversation, defer to your best judgment. As far as that resolution. I think that's the best way to go about it. Do we need a motion? We do, and so as discussed, right, as discussed, the 2411, resolution 2411, that we would vote in the affirmative as amended, or we would not support it if unamended. Okay. Move to approve 2411 and support with the amendment as discussed. If the amendment is not moved forward, then we would not. And with the two Representative Kaiser's.
Second.
You doing that? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That passed.
Thank you, folks.
All right. So with that, we're gonna move on to our workshop. Do we need a 5-minute break, or are we good just rolling into the workshop?
Well,
Let's roll.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. All right, so we have our enrollment projections and our open enrollment seats for 24-25. We have the first one for Norris. Very much.
Well, thank you for having us this evening. Connie's passing on a packet to you, and while she does that, I'll just take a second to thank Connie and her team for all her work on kind of the presentation tonight. This is an annual workshop we do every year in January. It always precedes the approval from the board for open enrollment seats, which is required by state statute. So again, thank you to Connie and her team. When the budget is finally done in September, and I know the work that goes into that from everyone in this room, Connie's work really begins. Third Friday counts around the corner, and then Connie's team is working, not just getting school up to speed with transportation and all the things that go into scheduling, but also working on next year's stuff. So this very much so tonight, the packet Connie gave on the right side is the budget calendar, because tonight really begins the kickoff for the budget cycle that we start here in about a month in February, which is where the board here's the first crack essentially at enrollment projections, which you'll hear tonight, the first iteration. I say iteration because second Friday count is this Friday, which can change some of those projections and should. And then really we get into enrollment projections. So I share this tonight because it's upcoming. And then on the left, we'll talk through some of the images you'll see. They're easier to see on paper than on the screen. So with that, we're going to jump in and feel free to ask questions as you have them. So the objectives of tonight are to do a few things. One, describe the enrollment projection process and kind of what we go through to determine enrollments for the following year, both by grade and by school. Outline that enrollment district-wide and by school that was mentioned, and then how the projection impacts open enrollment seats and how the calculation works. It's not simply a number we come up with, it's a formula derived by sections and projected enrollment and things like that. So the enrollment projection process happens in 2 steps. We essentially roll kids forward by their grade. So kindergarten becomes first becomes second, third becomes fourth. And that image is kind of in the left side of your packet, looks like this. We'll show on the screen in a second for everyone watching online. But essentially the enrollment path forward process with the adjustments takes into account more than just rolling students over. So what that does is move seniors, we advance each grade to the next grade, and then we review historical analysis on, hey, from 8th to 9th, do we get more kids or less kids? From 5th to 6th, from 6th to 7th, right? And so that's what this table does. It's complex to describe, but historically we see 3 pockets where we can with certainty project more and or less students, and those are from K4 to kindergarten, which is around the state statute of getting 6-year-olds into school. Some students can 6 in kindergarten, or families just decide this is a good time for them. We see a slight decrease from 5th to 6th. Not sure why that might be, but we'll talk about that in a later slide. And then we see a huge increase in 8th to 9th, which can be tied to many things. My main reason typically is that parochial schools are expensive for high schools, athletics, music, things like that, facilities. So a lot of the families that maybe attend K-8s come back for next grade. And then again, projected enrollment for staffing, we always plan to the 92nd percentile. And the reason that is because we are neighborhood schools. So we have to offer families that live in certain neighborhoods enrollments in those schools. So we have to have an 8% buffer. If triplets were to move into a Pershing, that would be challenging if we didn't do this, right? So That's kind of the process, and that's held true, and I'll have some statistics for you at a later slide to show kind of how close we often get. But this is important as, again, this connects to the budget, right? So this document here, I'll do my best to describe it for you, but if you look at the top, it says 5-year projection. I urge you just to look at next year, because the projection, again, takes into account transitions and increases and decreases. So please, for the purposes of tonight, look at just next year, because each year we do a really good job projecting 1 year out. But overall, the top, there's an actual and a projection. So an actual, you can find actual and then find 23, 24. Those are the actual enrollments by grade from the third Friday count. So in yellow are the high schools. At 610 is your seniors. 626 would be your juniors. You can work your way down. In green is our intermediate students, and in blue is our elementary. At the very bottom, 388 are full K, right? So you can see 24, 25, kind of a hard, dark line. That's the divider to the projection, right? So you can see the 626 current juniors became the seniors next year. We don't see a transition increase or decrease. So our seniors are projected to be 626, so forth and so forth and so on. So that's kind of a quick glance. At the bottom of your page, we'll get to that in a second. That kind of summarizes each of those different colors: kindergarten to 5th grade, elementary, intermediate, and the high school. This is an easier way, I think, to look at it on the screen here. This kind of shows you where we're heading in terms of enrollments. And typically, statistically, a trend line of data from a longitudinal perspective is like 3 to 5 years. And the reason I bring that up is because if you look from, you can even look on your sheet here too, from kindergarten to 8th grade, we have a really good 8-year piece of data to show that our new norm for enrollment by grade is going to be in the 450s. And you can see it 427 in kindergarten, 451 in 8th grade, right? So currently, this is projection. Currently, going back to the graph you have, all of our high schools are in the 600s, right? And you look at now this, you can see that the 481 became 530. That's the bump to 9th grade. But our new norm for the schools is going to be the 450s to 480s, maybe in the early 500s for high school. That's to be determined still, right? But you can kind of see that's the new norm for us. And so when we get to like staffing here next month, you can start to forecast where some of the potential attrition-based reductions might be because of enrollment, right? And that happens with different pockets, different times. And certainly it's no secret to anyone here, given the longevity we've had as schools, right? But the difference towards the bottom of your graph, you can see 153 students. That's the projection. That's been about the average. I would say between, 80 to 120 is probably the norm. And then this year with the high school, 600 and 610 is the senior, 388 is the incoming. So the difference is really the difference there. Speaking to kind of how close we've been, I want to just point out, so like this is 23. This is last year projection to actuals. How close are we? So we projected 7 at the very bottom, 7,039. Our actuals were 6,939, so about 100 kid difference. That's 1.4% off. So that's pretty close. We had Roper's report that projected they would have been off by 6%. So like year to year, we can do a better job, I think, than a lot of the companies can. They do a better job of saying, what's the trend in the community? Right? That's why companies, when we do neighborhood schools, consolidation, they look at those firms because they can go, hey, that's a development happening. We're predicting that development might have 300 people, right? We don't go that deep. That would require counties to spend a lot more time than they already do. So that was this past year, going back a year, 22 to 23, 7239 was the projection, 7161, we were off 78 kids, that was 1% exactly. The prior year, we were off 117, that was 1.5%. So like we can get within 1% for, in terms of staffing, the biggest item for our budget. If we're over 2, I'm like, oh, we probably didn't do as good that year, but 1% is really good, I think, for staffing from the budget. So I have a lot of faith in the process. That's the point. So what's the point of projection? How do we get to open enrollment? So it's kind of like this flow. And thank you to Tess Thomas for the visual. It's a more fun way to list these things out. So first, county and our team works through projected enrollment. Third Friday count comes in. Second Friday count comes next week. that leads us to the approval of open enrollment at the end. We applied the board approved section class size matrix, so the ratios for our grades, so K4 is different than high school, right? So that will be coming. We then cascade the enrollment into each school. What does the projection look like by school, by grade? And then we determine the number of sections as a school in a district. And then those sections, those staff sections break down into a number of student sections, which go into course requests for the secondary schools, which result in open enrollment fees, kind of a long process. So this is the current like staff enrollment projection in third Friday count. As I said before, in yellow, you can see the to be determined, but you can get a sense here of what the projection is far right by each school. We'll get into that. This is more of a district-wide focus. You can see the 758. That number's different than on your sheet because for this table, we look at non-self-contained students because self-contained students are staffed through special education. That's the difference in the 30. So this is the board approved section size kind of matrix, I call it. So you can see here, I'm going to start with 4K, top right, top left, sorry. 4K, the planned max, board approved planned max is 20 students. 92% is roughly 18 kids. So when we staff 4K student classrooms, we staff them to 18, knowing that they can go to 20, right? Same thing with kindergarten, it's 22, 92% of that's 20. First grade, 24, that's 22. So the building average, so when we get to February and you start to see what are our staffing by school, what's the average of the enrollment, what's the student teacher ratio by school, keep this in the back of your head because we staff an elementary school to an average of 22. Right? So any school below 22 is actually below the 92nd percentile, even though they could go to 24, right? Same thing with our high schools. We look for intermediate and high school secondary approach of 27 to 1 with a max of 30. Next one.
What was the last time this was? Number for adopted, yeah.
This, oh, I'd have to look.
I'm just saying, I understand the numbers, I understand how it's all, it's like 27 kids in a course, that's exactly.
Oh, 27. No.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, am I reading it wrong?
That's 25.
Yeah.
But the max,
The capacity is 27.
the max is 27. We staff to 25, but the max could be right to 27.
Even 25 is not, I'm just, the cheapest is 20, it's, 20, so 5, it does make a huge difference. Especially in, like, I'm just,
Yeah.
maybe something we talk about.
Yeah, we can certainly discuss it. So how do we take the board approved matrix into account? You know, we go through the staffing assumptions, obviously the policy, the ranges and student teacher ratios, all those things come into play from past year to prior year to the projected. So that rolls into essentially, this sheet you have in your packet here. That's what this is. This is a little more built out. But essentially, we take the number of sections we need in each grade, multiplied by the desired number of students, the non-planned, sorry, the 92 percentile in each grade, and that multiplier results in a number, and that's subtracted from the projected enrollment to give you the number of open enrollment seats. So if you start with 4K, 18 times 22.5 is 405. The projected enrollment is 388. That says 405 is greater than 388, which results in the residual amount of 17 new open enrollment seats. Then we factor in waivers. Historically, the number of waivers depends on obviously the number of seats we have. So the waivers can be added into the open enrollment, given that there were a pocket of families who were removed from our district this past year without their consent. Our recommendation potentially on the 22nd will be to include all waivers this year for families to have the option to come back if they want. That'll be up to the board to decide, but that's going to be our recommendation. So the number of waivers, 37, is included into the 96 open enrollment seats the formula produces. And then we'll have to work with the schools closely to make sure that we can have space for those students. That's how many we were counting on the 37?
23.
23. So 23 to 37 families who will be removed from our district by months ago. So the next part I just want to go through, I know this was asked. I pulled my presentation up from last year and I had a couple of notes. Brendan had a question, open enrollment, Brian, so I had a couple of notes, I pulled it up and I'm like, they had some questions on open enrollment, so I thought I'd do a little bit deeper dive, so Connie and I've been working on kind of our open enrollment history to try to break down kind of some of the questions you might have had that maybe you still have. So our open enrollment over time, so I went back to 2016, 17, certainly can go back further, but I felt like 6 or 7 years is a good amount of aggregate data. So in blue, you can kind of see open enrollment in, and then in red, you can see open enrollment out. And I'll go into each section, open enrollment in and out in a second separately. But you can see overall open enrollment in has declined. That's no secret, likely to anyone here. I'll get into those reasons. And then open enrollment out has increased and leveled off a bit. Now, 2 years isn't enough time to make that statement accurately, but it looks like it has a bit now. So we'll see what that goes into here. So open enrollment, and I wanted to kind of give you some more data beyond just what you saw. So here in this chart shows you the number of seats in the middle column too that the board's approved over time, right? So this goes back, probably precedes many of you on the board in 16. But you can remember maybe if you were on the board or engaged with the board of why that might be, but we had 318 open enrollment seats approved. We had 1,232 students open enrollment in. And at the time, that consisted of 194 seniors, because you have to think about open enrollment similar to our enrollment projection. When a senior class graduates out, right, and you have new students coming, if you don't accept more than graduate out, your number is going to decrease too, right? So it's kind of two things. So as you can see over time, the board has simply, over time, through a formula, has accepted less students. So we historically have a 40 to 45% open enrollment acceptance rate in. So anytime you see an approved number of seats, we historically get about 40, 45% of them to accept those. So if we have 133, this might be a little different if it's 37 or waivers attending, but we might get 60 families, it might be 50%, right? So that's kind of what I plan for. You might ask, well, why, Aaron, in 21 did 210 become 291? That's because during COVID, we overstaffed schools because we had families attending half days in, half days out, right? That was kind of part of the plan at that time. And yeah, that's probably no further to go there. And then in 23, 24, that took a drop because we consolidated 3 schools that run more efficiently, require less, you have less sections that are under 90%. So that's the straightforward reasons there. That's kind of a summary of kind of where we're at today with 133, likely actually with 90, right? That's baked in the 37. Open enrollment out is a little bit harder to put your finger on. So I'll do my best to extrapolate and give you some facts along with assumptions, and certainly open to conversation or discussion or comments from each of you here. So the first thing I want to start with is one interesting part is OPAL, which is the DPI portal for open enrollment, allows you to track a number of things, right? So our job is to try to figure out what's important and what's not, right? One of the things that I find interesting is each year, generally, students don't have to reapply for open enrollment. That's no different here. If we accept a student in today as a first grader, unless something happens where they would jeopardize their enrollment or they move into the district, they would remain open enrollment students as long as they wanted to until they graduate. Now, in some of the K-8 feeders, the high school, that's an exception, but generally the K-8s, that's the same true. And then if it's a different high school district, some districts make the students apply. But generally, if a student applies and is accepted as an open enrollment out student to a different district, they're an open enrollment student until they choose not to be, similar to what we do, right? So what's interesting, I find, is that in 2016, all the way to 23, 24, the number of OE out applications really hasn't changed. I mean, I know from 498 to 584, that's a change, but generally, if you look, it's an average of about 500 over 7 years. So like the number of families each year that are new requesting to leave really hasn't changed. I mean, it has, but very marginally. But what has changed is the total number of students who push out. That's conflicting data to me, right? So why is that? I'm trying to extrapolate. So to me, it could be a number of things. I think the number of students being accepted in other districts has obviously increased because the number of families that are requested hasn't changed, but the number has gone up 45% in 7 years. Families being accepted at a higher rate. So that's number one. Number two, the number of families being accepted in early K-4 to 5th has gone up. That's a large portion. And then the number of families enrolling in virtual schools obviously has gone up too. So that will show you that picture in a second. Okay, so we went a little bit further. So we said, well, where are the 1433 kids going? So this is hard to read. So I apologize. We should have printed this one too. But 918 of the students attend MPS. So that's a 52% or 64% of the students choice to MPS. Of that, 528 of the 918, so 57% of the 918 in MPS are in elementary, 22% are in intermediate, and 19% high school. This supports the 9th grade bump because 70% of 918 are in K-8 and only 19% stay in to go to high school, right? So of the students that we see in 6-8, a majority are going to come back. So that's supporting what we're seeing. And then the remainder, really, it's kind of spread across multiple districts, but you can see here, like, we forgot to update this number of students. I have that somewhere, but a lot of the districts on here that have 50, 60 kids are virtual schools, like McFarland. Waukesha historically doesn't accept open enrollments, and the Achieve does. COSA has a virtual academy. Two Rivers, Grantsburg, McMerrill, I mean, Appleton, families aren't driving there every day, right? So that's the other part here. And then across the state, there's been a 20% increase in the number of virtual charters since 2020. So 3 years going now. So that's also another reason. Kind of wrap this up here. So in 2018, that was the last time the district did an open enrollment out study to dive into kind of a bit deeper than I went, obviously, tonight, of the reason. So I linked in for the public or for anyone here to look at this. So the first link is to their presentation that they put together, kind of a summary of that. And then on the right is the aggregate data. So the challenge and the conclusions are really, it was all over the board. I have the document here. They were conflicting at best to me. You know, some families said quality of teaching in school were a priority. And then some of the same families later would say, well, it's the perception of the district, but we also think the district viewed well. So it was conflicting. So you can certainly review that and draw your own conclusions. But yeah, I'm not sure much more to say, but the problem generally I have with it is that of the 1,000 families, of the 1,000 students who choiced out in 2018, this survey only takes into account 10% of them because they only spoke to 10%. So, you know, 100 students seems at the surface level with a good sample size. It doesn't break down like, well, was that, how many families though? Since families, 105 students. So is that 30 families, 40 families, 50 families with a parent that is speaking on behalf of 6 kids, 3 kids, 2 kids, like, I don't know. So in general, I think a new study should likely be done that's quantitative and qualitative, like meeting with families. The challenge is time because this is what an outside vendor is going to do for them. You know, we contacted 1,000 families back. They probably did. Did they actually speak with them? No, there are many, right? So likely some work to do here, but I just thought given the questions last year that I put them together for you guys to kind of put your teeth into a little bit. So. Okay, that's all I have. So I missed that.
I think so.
Question from the board? We're looking at 133 open homes across all grades. Any of them special education? Oh, do you have any?
That'll be, yes, that's included, but yeah, I don't have it up right. I think there was 5 students inclusive of the 133. Kind of pulled levels up right now. Good question.
What? I want to have a conversation about that. You know, it's no secret that we've had a hard time keeping special education staff in this district, and I have concerns about opening any additional seats for special education students only because I don't want to stress further our current special education staff. And me personally, I'd rather forego whatever possible money that we might get from by in the hopes that maybe having 5 less students may help the staffing that the struggle that we currently face. Other board members have any opinion on that?
That's what I would say. And I don't want to cheat those kids, you know, of getting the attention that they need. You know, as well, just, you know, being short staffed and stuff, please. My concern is we're security. And that's it. I understand that there's a.
But we're excluding because we don't necessarily, we can't promise that we have the staff to support them. So I think that's a bit.
Yeah, I guess it's how you look at it, but yeah, that's my.
I see what you're saying, but
If we can't give them what they need.
yeah, if we can't confirm that we're gonna have the
provide what we
staff
need.
to support the needs that they have coming in, then we should accept that
Yeah.
because we want to provide the service.
Sure. I don't know,
Like
I
you said,
don't want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I pulled up the action item that we drafted. So we have per Ann and Laura's calculation, we have in grades K through 4, they work through bands. So like any student in this range would be accepted 1 seat available for a level 2 student in grades 3 through 5. 2 seats would be available for students in level 2. In grades 6 through 8, 0 students in level 1, and 0 students in level 2, and then grades 9 through 12, 3 students in level 1, and 1 student in level 2.
Which is level.
Yeah, so
I understand.
yeah, I can't speak specifically to
Okay.
levels, that's not my area of expertise, but the level, each student that applies with a disability, their IEP gets reviewed by Ann and Laura to determine the level for the services, and after that, they would like fit with a specific case manager to provide their IEP. So, without adding on the 5 or 6 seats total, inclusive of the one, they're not in addition to my food, so.
No, yeah, it's something I thought about when we get more and more emails. It's one of the, the things we're approving every meeting, we're seeing more and more that resigning. And until we can stop that and have some confidence that we can, you know, provide services for sure for the students that we already have in our district and have accepted. Yeah, we first one. I'd rather just kind of say, not, I know we did last year. I think we had 0 special education seats last year. Because there wasn't room.
I can bring that for.
But-
Second,
Something for us to consider. I worry, you know, about ensuring that we can,
yeah,
not
because
set I sign myself up for failure. You know, I wanna say something.
what Noah's saying is correct, like Ann and Laura do the same process that we do with enrollment projected in sections and staff. And so they go, we need X number of case managers, and then the extra is what Ann and Laura are referring to, but if the extra is contingent upon a fully staffed group, it presents a challenge. So I understand that. It's definitely worth stuff.
We're not taking action now. I just wanted to get some more thoughts on that, because we didn't talk about specifically. Any other questions regarding presentation from the board? That was for a motion. Second, it's been seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.